one of the biggest things that you can do for your own personal growth is to create content consistently. So if it's not enough to grow your business, create it for yourself. My entire world has changed in the past like 4 years just from creating content. And I'm not even like a huge influencer. Like, it's just like the people around me and how they interact and how I view myself has completely shifted.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new edition of the None of Your Business podcast. Today we have for you a very special treat because we are joined by Damian Tenuta. He is out of New York City. He is helping people in the healthcare space reach more people and make an even bigger impact through digital marketing. But not only that, he has a heart and passion for wellness. He has founded Founders Common, which brings people together around the common thread of wellness. Obviously, when you take a look at him, he can probably run for 52 miles straight. That's not me, but I love the idea of Founders Common and coming together around health and wellness. Damian, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
I want to dive in because I want to get a little bit about this journey, how you end up, because I've been following you on social media, how you end up in New York with your company, and kind of tell us a little bit of the bumps, the peaks and valleys that you've encountered along the way.
Definitely, yeah. There's been some bumps for sure. I actually have run 52 miles straight.
Oh my gosh, okay.
It's funny you say that. But yeah, so we started, I started it just straight out of college, company, Contente. It's a media company for wellness practices. And when we started, we had probably, this was a few years ago now, like right after COVID, 2020, 2021, and probably working with 40 clinics. There was one day, 1 week where I got a call from 5 people, 5 of our clients, and they all said the same thing. You've said it before where it's like, hey, Damian, look, we're getting leads, which is great, but we can't convert them. So we're going to have to
Discontinue.
Discontinue, because the leads are crap, right? And at that point, having 40 clients total, 5 of them canceled. That's a big chunk of business. And I could see, like, my brother and I, we were co-founders. If this continued, we'd be going out of business pretty soon, right? So my parents had a green 87 Ford RV sitting in their driveway in Florida. So my brother and I decided to get in this RV and travel around the country to visit the rest of our clients. Figure out what was it that was the difference between those practices who were actually getting good leads or could convert. Was it something that we could do? And then those that weren't, right? What was the difference? So we were driving through country, we went from Carolinas to California. It was an 87 Ford, and the RV was not in the best shape. So a trip that should have took us like 6 months, it ended up taking like 2 years.
Wait, you were on the road in an RV for 2 years?
In and out, right? So what would happen is we'd go 100 miles, we'd go through a few states, and the RV would break down. So we'd end up in a middle of nowhere, Arizona, middle of the desert. No one spoke English. They were like right on the border. And so we'd be living in the RV there and be like, yeah, screw this. We're going back. We're hanging out in New York. Because that's where all of our friends were while they repaired it, right?
Got it.
Yeah, so it was in and out, and that's kind of like the tie to New York, which we'll get to later. But yeah, ended up taking us like 2 years to get through this trip. My brother and I would go, we'd get a YMCA membership. And before each of our visits to the clients, we'd get a quick shower. If we couldn't find a shower, we'd quickly, put the deodorant on, make sure that we were like look professional. And no one knew that we were in this Ford RV. But the whole time we were trying to figure out, what was the difference. There was one doctor in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. His name is Dr. Dirk Willard. And this is 2021, but he had one video that he put out. That was, we put some ad spend behind it, targeted his local area. One video, though, brought in 200 people.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was all, like, everyone who came in, he'd be spotted in the grocery store saying, like, hey, like, I know you recognize you from the video. And then when they came into his practice, they're like, hey, I loved what you said in that video. It really resonated with me. Can we work together? Or can you do that same thing to me? So that's when we realized really like the power of content and social media, and this was like before it was big. Like everyone knows these days how powerful it is. So we really started to try and figure out like how could we create content for these wellness practices in a way that was told the story and actually had people come in wanting to work rather than just like a Groupon deal, because that's what we were doing before, right? It was just like a quick Groupon deal. If you're putting in, if you're putting a worm on your hook, you're not going to catch a shark, you're not going to catch a whale, right? So it has like that first point of contact has a huge impact for everything else in the funnel, right? It's going to lead to who are you talking to? Who are you resonating with? That's going to impact every other step. And that's what we've seen. And since then we've just been creating content for practices.
Yeah, so tell us, everybody talks in your industry about frameworks. Tell us like what you discovered. What are the frameworks that then worked for that doctor in Winston-Salem? And how have we then transferred those frameworks out to your other clients?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things is just the time and effort that it takes to create content. And especially like local businesses, you might not have the budget, or you might not have the time, or you might not have, the experience putting yourself out there on socials. And that was a big thing that we struggled with, is how do we get doctors to create content? And last year, I flew out to a big personal brand in the industry. Dan Martelli has like a mastermind in Kelowna. So people flew in from all over the world, Seoul, South Korea, Spain, just to learn like what he's doing, because he's blown up from 100,000 followers to over like 1.2 million in less than 12 months. And what he did was hired someone local in his area, a high school kid, to come in and film content for him. And he was able to develop him by putting him in the right environment, giving him the right frameworks on how to capture the content for him. And he's become his right-hand man. And he was the one behind growing this brand. So we're like, okay, how can we apply this to doctors? There's a lot of high school kids, obviously, and wanting to create content, make a little money on the side. So what we ended up doing was putting in a local ad out to each clinic's area to find these high school kids, to then come in, train them up. They have to have a good camera. It's best if they have some experience, but usually they're looking to get their, to network in the local community, right? To get their first client. So we're hiring them, we're training them, giving them the framework on exactly how to coach the doctor through telling their story in a way that's actually going to convert those people. And that framework that we give them is what we've called the C3 method. So it's Captivate, capture, captivate, convert. Capture is you have to grab their attention. These days, in the chiropractic space, just a regular chiropractic adjustment isn't going to grab attention. It's way too oversaturated. So what is it that you're doing in your practice that is maybe a little bit different? It might be a little bit, a different colored shirt. Something that's going to drive that curiosity right off the bat to get them to stop scrolling. And then at that point, you're telling a captivating story about what makes you unique and different and better in your practice. So we work with a lot of what's called corrective care doctors who change the structure of the spine, and they do pre and post x-rays, so they have proof of what's happening. And a lot of times showing that proof is something that someone else in that community needs, because it's different. You don't see a lot of chiropractors taking pre and post x-rays and showing the proof of what's happening. So that's something like an example of something that's unique and different. And then that call to action at the end, what is going to get that person to come into your practice? It could just be, that in-depth consultation or figuring out exactly what's going wrong.
You mentioned Dan Martell earlier, and I've heard this attributed to him. I can't verify it, but I'll give him the credit. But one of the things when you talked about what makes you unique, and you even said like, oh, maybe like this, you have a different colored shirt. The story that I heard attributed to Dan Martell was that one day his team had come in and they were all wearing the blue shirt with the khaki pants. Yeah. And he was like, what are you guys doing? And they were like, oh, we dressed up as you. And the quote then that I heard was, if people cannot dress up as you for Halloween, then you do not have a personal brand. So I thought that was very interesting, and since I had heard that, one of the things, and you can also watch our content. One of the things that's interesting is these are real glasses, but I don't always wear glasses. I typically wear contacts. Typically, I in my life began wearing glasses for golf, right? Because they could get a little bit of a better prescription and see the ball further. And I have this thing, a condition in my eye, and they wanted me to protect my eye from the sun and the wind. And I have multiple pairs of glasses. I have red, I've got blue, I've got black, I have all these different glasses. But then somebody one day was like, "Oh, where are your white glasses?" And I realized, like, as far as that goes, is that was my personal brand. So now on social media, on television, on podcasts, I do attempt to wear my white glasses. I have all my other glasses. You can catch me many times without white glasses, but that becomes part of what makes you unique. And so one thing for everyone to consider is like, well, what's my thing? And I remember Clinton Sparks one time was asking me about Lori. And Clinton was like, "Hey, so who's going to be there?" And he was like, "Is that, the short hair, she's going to be there, right?" And like, that's your personal brand. Clinton was like, "She's always there." Like that's what makes you stand out. That's what makes you memorable. And I also tell people what stands out gets remembered. And I think that oftentimes we live in this world where we really try to not stand out, like we want to blend in, but that makes you forgettable. That's just like, oh, you're just like everyone else. You have the same message, you dress the same, everything about you is the same. So I really want to encourage everyone, as I like that, is to stand out. Try to figure out what your personal brand is and be willing to step out there and stand out on that particular personal brand. I want to talk a little bit then about Founders Common, though. I find that super unique because you've run apparently 52 miles. Tell us about this idea of building this community around, it really marries like this entrepreneur side of you and this health and wellness side of you, and then you've brought this together into a community.
Yeah, I couldn't have imagined what it's become in a million years, because when I first moved to New York City, I was still hanging out with my college buddies. We were going to the bar. I want to do something big, right? Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I have these big goals. I know I need to get around those people who are also doing the same thing. So I like running. I'm going to be running anyway. And I want to build a network. So I just say, hey, I knew like 3 people probably who were founders, entrepreneurs, and I'm like, hey, let's get together and run. We'll meet at WeWork and we'll run through Times Square. So that was like 2 years ago was the first message I sent, and we've been running every single week since then. We do runs through Times Square, and it's since grown. We have 5,000 people like following the community. We're running in San Francisco, Singapore, Austin, and New York City. And we're working with some of the top like wellness brands too, who sponsor the community to get out there in New York City. And it's just, I think it shows just the power of following what you're passionate about, and you can really make a business out of anything.
Yeah, tell us about that. What was sort of the creation journey for that? You're running, you have 3 buddies, boom, 5,000 people. Like, how did we go from 3 to 5,000?
I think it's first content. I mean, I posted consistently every single week about like what I was doing. That was kind of like my brand in the city as well. Is like I was this guy who was running through the streets of Times Square, and that was super unique. Like, not a lot of people run through Times Square, right? So it looks good on social media.
They're escaping, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They're escaping. They're escaping.
Right. But it was just the consistency plus the content. Really, like, over time, just people started to like come up around this movement of running through the city with founders. And
is that something that you are teaching your clients as well, how to build community in addition to building their content?
Yeah, I mean, the power, like the first time that I really recognized the power of it, like I come from Michigan, and it's a completely different culture than New York City. But in New York, a lot of people are creating the content. And I remember the first time we were at this like sauna party in New York with our founder community, and this guy comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, I've been following your content. I saw what you're doing, like you're training for an Ironman, you're building this company, you're building Founders Common, and I really liked it, and he ended up joining the community. And for me, that was like to meet someone through the organic content that I posted over time, and like him coming up to me and shaking my hand and having that relationship, because I'm like, I try to be real and authentic on like about like just talking about what I like. So automatically, whoever comes up to me, like we're gonna be buddies. And he's not just the founder in New York City, but he's also a functional wellness doctor who we're gonna be working together for on the media side of things. So once you meet someone in person after they've seen your content who you would not have known before, I think that's when everything shifts and you're like, okay, I wanna create more. I wanna be consistent with this. I'm just getting so much out of it, and the people are resonating who've been following as well.
Common theme that we've seen today, though, is there's a lot of reservation, a lot of blockage against making content. What advice would you give? So, I mean, even if you're like, yeah, so thanks for the tip. Get this high school kid with the camera, and they're ambitious, and I need content, bang. But then that's where people are like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I don't want to put myself out there. What advice do you have to help people to get over themselves? I don't like how I looked on the camera. My hair wasn't right. How do we get over that and actually just step into our obligation to create content for the world?
Yeah, for me, the reason I like content is I would have never thought I would be like creating content for a living, like for clients or for myself. Because in high school, I had a ton of acne. I was super shy, barely talked. If you spoke to any of our like close family friends, they'd be like, this guy's a completely different person. And it was the content and putting out content consistently was the thing that changed that. Because I was able to create the narrative to my phone of how I wanted to be perceived or how I thought internally. And then people would reflect that back to me and be like, okay, this guy is who he says he is. And working with Dan, I've been to his house, and he says that creating content, it's not just about the business, it's also the personal development side, because you will have to deal with the hair issues, the bad days. Like, how do I actually communicate in a way that's going to create emotion in that viewer? It's the biggest, one of the biggest things that you can do for your own personal growth is to create content consistently. So if it's not enough to grow your business, create it for yourself. Yeah, because my entire world has changed in the past 4 years just from creating content. And I'm not even a huge influencer. It's just the people around me and how they interact and how I view myself has completely shifted.
How can, one, you mentioned before chiropractors, but then you mentioned functional medicine. Who do you work with? Do you work with anybody? Healthcare? Where's your sweet spot?
Yeah, we started off with chiropractors, and then have grown since then to work with pretty much anyone who is aligned with our mission of just helping people live better lives. Right?
And what's the services that you provide? Organic, paid, everything, funnel creation, content, guidance, obviously getting them connected with the people that will capture.
Right.
What's sort of the scope?
Yeah, there's two main things. So the first one is that getting, capturing the content, setting them up with a local videographer, training them, coming into the practice for 2 to 3 hours and actually capturing that content. And then the second part is actually driving that traffic via paid ads to the clinic in order to get higher quality people and really build, not just create content to bring more people in. Obviously that's important, but also building your brand without devaluing your services.
And then lastly, how can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, so my personal Instagram is Damian Tenuta, and the business side is Get Contente, so G-E-T, content with an E at the end. And if you want, we have a free script, job post, plus how to create a shot list. If you want that for yourself, just message Get Contente, the Instagram page, Media Sean, so we know it comes from you, and we can send that over to you.
Awesome. Damian, thanks for being on the None of Your Business podcast. Appreciate you.